Welcome to Hood War Stories. In this episode, I'll be discussing the war between the Geer Gang Crips and the 18th Street Gang. The Geer Gang Crips are a Black American gang located in Los Angeles, California. The Geer Gang Crips originated in 1978 as the Geer Avenue Gangsta Crips. This name was given to them by Big O and derives from the 5400 block of Geer Avenue. What initially started as a group of neighborhood kid dancers eventually evolved into a full-fledged street gang. 18th Street is considered the largest gang in LA County, but that label is misleading. Even though 18th Street is estimated to have approximately 15,000 members, they're a collection of over 20 separate individual gangs operating under the same label. The notoriety of the gang is based on 4 distinct barrios, 3 near downtown LA, just west of Staples Center, and 1 in the West Adams area. Today we'll be primarily focusing on the Smiley Drive clique, sprawled across a swath of working class Los Angeles, just east of Culver City. 18th Street Smiley Drive clique, named for the street where the group took root, flourished amid the explosion of crack dealing in the 1980s. For years, its bustling street corner drug trade drew a steady stream of customers through the Latino and Black American communities south of the Santa Monica Freeway. Suppressing the clique has been a top priority for the LAPD Southwest Division. Members range from middle-aged veteranos to teenagers. Members of this clique are known to be extra violent and are known to take risks other groups would not take. In the early 90s, an FBI LAPD task force targeted the Smiley Drive clique after local authorities identified it as one of the most troublesome gang affiliates in the city. After the arrest stemming from a 2-year federal task force, officials declared the neighborhood free of significant gang activity, but within a year, the area had once again become a hotbed of shootings, drug dealing, and intimidation. A gang injunction was granted by a superior court judge, which barred Smiley Drive members from associating publicly and from engaging in a wide range of normally legal activities, such as carrying pagers and standing on street corners. Records show that when an agent served injunction papers to one of the clique's reputed gang leaders, the gang member laughed as he drove away. The Smiley Drive clique and Geer Gang were 100% allies, as they shared the same neighborhood and had the same enemies. In 1994, members of the Rancho clique of 18th Street, who would hang out on Gibraltar Avenue in the jungles, got into a conflict with the Black P-Stones. The jungles have long been a Black P-Stone stronghold. The Rancho clique tried to set up a drug point in the jungles, but the Black P-Stones did not approve and checked them immediately. Allegedly, the Rancho clique refused to abide and listen to BPS's stern warning. And as a result, an OG 18th Streeter was fatally shot with a gunshot wound to the head. This kicked off the war between 18th Street and BPS. 18th Street also had another small clique in the jungles called the Ursula Locos, who would hang out on Ursula Avenue. When the war popped off, the Ursulas had to relocate to the Alsace clique's hood because the jungles became too dangerous, with shootings every day in the J's and surrounding blocks. BPS pressed a hard line on the Rancho Park clique and ultimately gave him the boot. After the Rancho Park clique was evicted from the jungles, they relocated to the Smiley Drive clique. During this time, 18 cliques close to downtown were also moving to the West Adams area. In turn, the Smiley Drive clique grew. The climate changed in the area, and new hostility was in the air. After having their access to the jungles revoked, the Rancho Park clique turned their attention toward the Geers. Tensions began to mount between the two, and gang graffiti on the walls began to reflect their conflict, with whack-outs and subtle disses. Early on Christmas Eve, in 2004, a young 18th Streeter was physically attacked by a few Geer Gang members. This particular member was a gunner for 18th Street and did not appreciate getting beat up. So later on that day, him and a few of the 18th Streeters waited in the bushes and waited for a Geer Gang member to appear. Around 4 a.m., John Johnson, also known as J-Fly, from Geer Gang, pulled up on Smiley Drive to pick up a friend. He was sitting in the car when he was fatally shot and ambushed by a few 18th Streeters. J-Fly's death erupted a war between 18th Street and the Geer Gang. The next morning on Christmas Day, Anthony, also known as Cavs from 18th Street, was riding his bike on Adams Boulevard when a Geer Gang member opened fire. Anthony was shot in the calf and was taken to the hospital for treatment. About a week later, on January 3rd, 2005, Anthony went into a mini market on the corner of Hauser and Washington to buy some cigarettes. Anthony told the store clerk that he had been shot the week before and that the people who had shot him were after him. After buying the cigarettes, Anthony left the store and proceeded to ride his bike east on Washington. As he rode, Anthony noticed 2 cars driving towards him. Anthony recognized the driver of the second car as Nathaniel, also known as G Wiz from the Geer gang, whom Anthony had known from the neighborhood for many years. The people in the two cars began shooting at Anthony. As Anthony attempted to evade his pursuers, he was shot in the back of his arm, near his left shoulder. A month later, on February 3rd, 2005, Joshua, who was an 18th streeter, and two civilians, Luis and Josefina, stood in the vicinity of Longwood and St. Elm Street. A black car drove slowly down Longwood and turned onto St. Elmo Street towards them. When the car was a couple feet away, it stopped. G Wiz, who was a passenger in the car, made a G sign with his hands. G Wiz then shot at Joshua and Luis with a semi-automatic handgun. Joshua and Luis were able to flee on foot. Nathaniel was arrested mid-March 2005. While in custody, detectives allowed Nathaniel to use a cell phone. During one of his calls, which was recorded, Nathaniel said that he knew Anthony had identified him in an ambush shooting where Anthony was struck in the calf. Anthony Perry, from Geer gang, was ultimately found guilty on all counts. Anthony was sentenced to 40 years to life. Retaliatory shootings continued as 18th Street began to assert their dominance. At the time of the war, Geer gang was only 100 members strong and had no outside help. The demographics in the neighborhood also began to shift. The West Adams community slowly became predominantly Hispanic as many black families began to move. And as a result, the Smiley clique grew even larger. Fully aware of the shift, they began to up the intensity. Houses began to get shot up, and civilians were scared to come outside their homes. 18th Street would heavily patrol their neighborhood.
Hey, bud. Yeah, how many niggas in the hood? Solid, bro. Yeah.
Quick game.
Shit. Hey, bud, bitch. You
Right here.
Where's that, bro? Where the gears at, my nigga? On that homie. Where the homie pull up to?
18 claims to allegedly have ran out the gears and put them on curfew. Civilians were getting pressed too.
Some West Side Geer, he got beat up. In my hood, bitch.
Already?
You got beat up.
Already?
You got beat up. Go to the 18th streets, I'm here. Bitch, you got beat up. You got beat up.
Up and through the following year, bodies continued to drop. On January 15th, 2006, at 4:15 p.m., Lamont and his friend Leon were in a car at the intersection of Smiley Drive and Duray Place. The corner was in the area claimed by both the Geer and 18th Street gang, but was more on the Geer side. A car then pulled up alongside Leon's vehicle. Two male Hispanics were seated inside. 2 seconds later, both of them began shooting at Lamont and Leon, firing over a dozen shots. Lamont dove beneath the dashboard. When the other car drove off, Lamont ran to his mother's home, where she dialed 911. Lamont returned to the corner, where he found Leon slumped over into the passenger seat. Leon had suffered gunshot wounds to his head, neck, face, shoulder, arm, and upper and lower back. He died from his injuries. Lamont had been shot in the left torso, but received treatment at the hospital and survived. 2 eyewitnesses, Veronica and Marco, gave a testimony in court of what they saw. Marco also identified one of the gunmen from a photo lineup. Eastside Pablo Martinez from the Smiley Drive clique was convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and carrying a loaded unregistered firearm. He was sentenced to 2 terms of life in prison without parole, plus an intermediate term of 176 years to life. At this point in the war, the Smiley Drive clique continued to push the Geers out of their original territory. The Rolling 40 Crips left the Geers in their territory and gave them a street near Normandy and King. Currently, 18th Street and Geer gang are still not on good terms, and no truce has been brought to the table. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.